something in the water. There's just something in the fucking water.
Everybody, welcome back to the channel. We're here to talk Alien Romulus. We've both seen it. And welcome. What were your first thoughts on Alien Romulus? The seventh movie in the franchise? Yeah.
If you're not counting AVP, yeah.
I am not.
Okay. I think that's the right call.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was a little nervous going, and I had high expectations from the gore aspect because I had seen some of this director's previous movies, especially his like Evil Dead remake from 2013, and that was absolutely gnarly, which is what I would want out of an Alien movie. But the story in that one was kind of weak, and so that made me a little nervous. Plus, I've watched like almost this entire franchise over the course of the last like last week and a half-ish, I guess. I've watched pretty much all of them, so I was worried there'd be a little fatigue going in. That kind of almost instantly went away, and I feel like the Alien franchise in like since the 2010s has had a weird mixed reception, right? I've liked a lot of what we got, but I know there's plenty of folks out there who are more kind of purists, love the originals, and Prometheus and Covenant didn't work for them. So I think this movie kind of played it a little safe, but I think it hit all the right notes, like a greatest hits album almost, right? And it feels to me kind of like doing for the Alien franchise what The Force Awakens did for Star Wars after the prequels, of just kind of giving people a reset point and reminding them what they love.
Yeah. I have a lot of similar thoughts to you. I also liked Prometheus and to a lesser degree Covenant, but I still liked it.
Yeah.
That said, I don't think we need every entry in the Alien franchise, now that we're at movie 7 or 9, if you're counting the AVP movies, to add to the lore and further the story and further tell us that corporations suck and are evil, all that. Like, I'm pretty sure that's established in this thing by now. In this franchise. So, like, all of that is there if you want to go back and watch the classic Alien entries, and they're great. You should. Now we know the rules of the game, and we just get a fun standalone like horror action story.
For sure.
And that's exactly what I wanted. This director Fede Alvarez can capture just the look and feel of horror so well.
Yeah.
And
for sure.
And I thought we got really strong performances too in a franchise where that hasn't always been the case.
Yeah.
So
yeah, they've been a bit mixed before, right? I feel like every movie kind of has a standout character or two, and the rest are just, and it's tough to do, I think, with a franchise like this when you know going in that pretty much everybody except for one or two is gonna die, right? So. I think they pulled it off.
I think too here, you look at Prometheus and Covenant, right? And you had Michael Fassbender in those. So you had some really established star power, going into the theater to get people there. And while there are known actors in this, cast, there's nobody at that level, right?
No, I mean, the only one for me that I really recognize is Cailee Spaeny, and that's just from seeing her in Civil War earlier this year, and I know she was Priscilla in Priscilla, which I've yet to see, but I know that's movie a lot of people really loved her performance in, and I feel like this is probably going to be what sets her into like star trajectory. I really hope so, because she's got the stuff, especially for this kind of genre.
Yeah, and I actually think I don't want to say the anonymity of the cast, because they are all strong actors, right, and known, but nobody of the star power of like Fassbender, who's coming off of the X-Men reboot and all of that.
Yeah, and I think Requiem for a Dream was before them too. Yeah.
So, and I don't think he had yet tripped up with Assassin's Creed, right? Like that was later.
No.
Okay,
correct.
So anyway, like this cast isn't as well known, and I think that actually helps the story. It helps you connect with the characters as characters and not see them as a person type, if that makes sense. So
totally does.
In a story like this, I think that really helps.
Yeah. One more thing I wanted to add in just like our top level thing is I've always kind of felt that like every Alien movie was pretty isolated, no pun intended to the game.
Yeah.
But I feel like this is the first time in an Alien movie that I've really felt like, oh, like this is actually a larger sci-fi world with like rules and an aesthetic and an energy. I think the opening minutes on that mining colony did a really good job of showing us just what normalcy looks like in the alien world. And I would love to see more of that because I think they. Oh, sorry. I just got a phone call in the middle of this, which just moved my entire window to the side.
Oops.
Yeah, right. But no, that was pretty much the end of my thought.
Okay. Excellent. Yeah, I mean, I do agree with that. And, you know, I guess at this point, we'll move into the actual review portion. Spoilers ahead, everybody. And so if you're watching this without having seen Romulus yet, go see it. We'd absolutely recommend it. We'll spoil the final conclusion there, but we'll score it here as we go. Our scoring model, we measure it on 4 different things. Story, cast, and performances, look, sound, and feel. And the intangibles, the like rewatchability factor. Would you tell your friends to go see this? Just the little things that go into making something greater.
Vibe, aura.
All that type of thing. So we'll start with story. And I thought this was exactly what it needed to be. Is this the strongest story in the Alien franchise? No, it is not. But it's really fun. And it's a simple enough story in that you can just get wrapped up in the tension of it.
Absolutely.
And not be constantly trying to make everything make sense.
Yeah, and I liked that there were more motives and stakes beyond just survival in this one, right? Like this movie starts fairly slow, but I think if you go back and watch them, pretty much every installment in the whole franchise does. But this one, I think, especially takes its time to set up characters and set up motivations. And so, you know, you get to a point where you understand, like, it's not just about survival. It's they want to get out of this awful, mining colony where they're essentially, like enslaved by Weyland-Yutani, right? And you see that in the very beginning where our main character, Rain, she's like so stoked to go to the, the DMV type office, get her travel passes to leave the planet because she's done her hours of service. And they're like, oh, actually, we restructure things, so we need you to do another 5 to 6 years of labor.
It reminded me of Andor when they all suddenly realized that the day is counting down the days until they're free, on that plant or whatever where people were working
on Narkina 5, the prison island.
That those days are never going to run out. It was never going to be allowed to happen. So essentially, and this is a heist movie, which I love. Like it's it starts out that way, right?
Yeah.
Almost every other Alien movie starts out as like scientific exploration, either on behalf of the company or like, in the newer ones, more like discovery, and then all hell breaks loose and whatever. But Alien 3 is the one like kind of exception to that. She lands on a prison planet or whatever.
Yeah.
But Alien 3 we just won't talk about here. So
not the gold standard for sure.
But this is a different type of story. These are people looking to engage in a heist in order to essentially steal their freedom. And it's a lot of younger people here. These aren't like hardened scientists or whatever, career lifers. These are all people that
college age kids, right?
Yeah, we're all Gen Z here, right? Pretty much, if we're talking current terms.
For sure.
So it's a story, looking at life from their perspective and looking at this feeling of having decades ahead of you, just basically, like you said, enslaved to this company.
Yeah.
Or should we take this chance to get away now?
Right.
And, they eventually do. And they get to this, what they originally thought was like a ship, right? But it turns out to be this station.
Yeah, it's like a space station outpost. Yeah.
Which is about to crash into the rings of the planet in about 36 hours. So they have only so much time to get in, get the like cryo chambers that you sleep over long distance journeys in, and then get them back to the ship and then go. That's essentially our thing.
Yeah, they're basically trying to steal pods that like you see Ripley go into at the end of every movie to, go into hypersleep so that while the ship's on autopilot, so she lands into, she doesn't age in that time. And that's such a cool concept to me. And I think it's been expanded so much in this movie to think about. It got me thinking about the travel of it, right? And it takes, I think we get the vibe that this colony is fairly remote, but they still say like it takes 9 years to get to the nearest planet. And to think about, like, it got me thinking about questions of the alien universe and how it works in ways I never have, which I appreciated, that I feel like it expanded the fiction a lot.
I feel like the science here of like travel and all those things is very grounded, much more so than almost any other sci-fi franchise.
Yeah, I buy that a lot more than like Star Wars jumping in and out of light speed and
or Star Trek, just warp. We'll go to warp 8 and be there in
seconds. Yeah.
So yeah, I definitely buy that. So they get on the station. The station is split into two halves, Romulus and Remus, which out of folklore, they're the twin brothers that, one murdered the other and then founded Rome.
Mm-hmm.
And this is where I thought the first story thing was great. Because as events unfold, so the events unfold and we get the normal alien formula where you have the parasites, right, trying to latch on.
Yeah, the face huggers.
Yep, looking at the background on our screen right now as you watch this, you see that here. So the face huggers, and eventually one latches onto one of the crew, and an alien is born, and all of that. But I don't know if you saw this part as you were watching it, but I thought it was actually really creative and cool. On the Remus part of the station, it was all the parasites, the face huggers. And on the Romulus half of the station, it was the actual alien. It was the xenomorph.
Oh, I didn't even notice that.
Yep.
That's really cool. Okay. Yeah. So they did such a good job, I think, with making the face huggers themselves feel like a threat. And I liked that they gave these kids a fighting chance, right? Because it starts with they're taking the cryo fuel, which is making the room get way warmer, so stuff's melting. You kind of have some water pooling up on the floor, and the alien, the 36 specimens, right, of the facehuggers that they had are starting to melt and starting to move and twitch, and what's going to happen, right? And that the whole thing of them like being in the water was absolutely just so freaky to think of, just not being able to see them. And like, it wasn't just like, I feel like usually it's like, oh, there's a face hugger, someone gets jumped on, like we know where we're going. I feel like they let that creature be a threat for a really long time, and it worked, right? Because you see the thing of like them moving kind of together as a horde. There's that really great scene where they're almost trying to do like a stealth mission by having their body temperature match the temperature of
such a great scene
of the ship. Like they do a lot with that creature that I really appreciated.
The very first time we meet the face huggers in this film, I absolutely love this scene. They're waiting essentially. It's there's so many scenes in this movie, and they remind me of video game sequences, honestly. Where this one, it's the one where it's like you press a button and you're waiting for a cycle to hit, and you have like 3 minutes, but here comes the horde of shit at you, And so now we're waiting for the android to reset with the new programming to open the door so they can get out, and they have to survive over the course of these like 3 minutes.
Yep.
In order to do that, and all the parasites are like flying at him. And the first thing I want to say is Bjorn should have played baseball, because Bjorn is like hitting these things out of midair.
Yeah,
with this stick like crazy.
With the electro zapper stuff, like it's almost like a cattle prod. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Bjorn, played by Spike Fearn, who is one of my favorite characters. We'll get to the characters in a few minutes, but I love that sequence. There's so much tension, and it's the terrifying aspect too of them being underwater. Just having that water in the room added so much to it, because they're underwater and you can't see them.
Right, and I think the imagery of the face huggers was so much more terrifying and visceral than it's ever been, because like usually it's just you see it from almost across from you, see one jump on someone's face. But then here you kind of see, like, you have this one shot where it's a close up and you see it like going, you actually see it on the dude's face, and he's kind of struggling and trying to pull away from it while it puts its little like I don't even know what to call it. It looks a little phallic, right? But he's trying to put whatever inseminates the host into his mouth. And it's just like, it's such nasty body horror to think about how uncomfortable and powerless and like violating it would be to have that happen to you.
I wonder how much that scene, the early parts of that scene, were inspired by the trash compactor scene in Episode 4 of Star Wars.
Oh,
because when Luke feels the monster, the trash monster, go by under the water, can't see it though, and it just creates this tension. And the same thing kind of happens here. And then all of a sudden, they just start flying everywhere in the room, and it's nuts. And it was just so cool. And then I want to hit on the one you mentioned too. Every video game, or a lot of video games, have a sequence in it where you have to go stealth mode. You have to get through a room without being detected. And that happens here. They figure out that the parasites respond to sound and body temperature, but they can't see. So they raise the temperature in the room to body temperature and then try to silently get through the room.
But they can't sweat, they can't get goosebumps, none of that. They have to. So it's not even just a stealth sequence that they can't get detected. It's they also have to try really hard to center themselves and remain perfectly calm, which is obviously not a very easy thing to do in this situation.
And they thought of everything except turning their radios off. But
you know what? I honestly don't have issues with that. I don't
either. I thought it was great.
Yeah, and I think it kind of, the sloppiness of it, I think works, of their behavior works for me with this group of characters, right? Because from Alien 1 on, really, Ripley knows what these things are. She knows how they work. She knows how to attack them. For these kids, it's not even just they've never encountered them. They didn't even know they existed until they saw them. So
they're not professionals at any of this.
No.
They're in over their head from the moment they take off from the planet.
Yeah, I mean, you even see that with how stressed Rain and Andy, her android brother, are just from the act of climbing into space.
Yep. And so all of that is really well represented in this movie. Finally, we do meet the xenomorph. After first seeing a really nasty looking but super cool display of the xenomorph from the original Alien.
It's almost like in a crucifix.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the story begins with the company finding, because Ripley at the end of the original Alien ejects that xenomorph out into space, right? So the company finds that, brings it aboard, and then uses it for research, discovery, and then have this station where there's all of these face huggers and whatever going on.
Right.
And they've got the original hung in this crucifix form. It's really creepy and cool.
Yeah, and were they doing that to study it, or did that just happen by virtue of combat or whatever? Do we know?
It might have been by virtue of combat.
That's what I figured. It looked very much like a death.
It struck me as on display as almost a trophy / reminder.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah, and I think the cool thing about it too is that you actually see it it's been there for a while, clearly at this point, right? So you see it kind of deteriorate and decompose a bit. And I think the thing that's the freakiest about that image is that you're able to see its skull, and the face part of it. It just looks like a person's skull, and it reminds you that these creatures are half, if not more, human every time, right? So it's really fucking terrifying, to be honest.
It's to move along on the story, because I know we're taking up a lot of time with it, but research has been done here to develop basically a serum that makes humans the perfect organism and makes them, unable to be, makes them less vulnerable to whatever, because essentially at every Wayland colony, the conditions there are killing off people constantly.
Yeah.
And that's bad for the company. It's hurts the bottom line, Hayden. So we have to address that by injecting them with this alien serum to take care of it all.
Well, and it's not just when they talk about it, almost Rook talks about it, right? The android who's left over from, who's kind of the lone survivor of this experiment, talks about it almost as if people are hurtling toward an extinction event. And you kind of get that vibe from the beginning of the movie of all of these kids are orphaned. Their parents either died from, a mining accident or cancer from exposure to dangerous chemicals, or they say that every cycle there's a new, what does he say, a new novel pathogen or something like that.
Yep.
So,
and it's like you said there, that those words are used, and the movie in itself is a representation of that, with the station itself hurtling towards that event, right, with the rings and all of that. As we realize, our actions sometimes speed up when that event is going to take place. Same thing happens on the station, right? So they end up doing something, and the station starts moving towards the rings faster, the course or something. So now, it used to be 36 hours is 45 minutes. So the race is on, and the crew ends up kind of getting split up / dead in many instances, but one person gets back to the ship originally. She injects herself with the serum in order to survive. And comes back at the very end. But, before we get to the conclusion of the movie, and there's a really cool sequence in the elevator shaft that I want to talk about real quick and just get your thoughts on.
For sure.
So, there's a lot of, obviously, verticality to it. Zero gravity and then gravity. And there's xenomorphs crawling up the thing at them. What did you think of that?
I loved the use of the zero gravity element in this movie a lot. It definitely made it feel like more, there were more hazards, right, just by virtue of being in space. I think that scene was absolutely incredible and filled with tension and allowed for a really great payoff at the end, where you kind of see Andy almost surfing on an alien's body while he's shooting it. It's so the cool. Recoil's bringing it down. I honestly think, though, I think there's another scene where they use zero gravity that I think is honestly even better. And we know that they have
the acid.
Yes, we know the aliens have acid blood, right? And so at this point in the film, they're on the very bottom level of the ship. So if the aliens blood, they bleed right through the hull, and people would be getting sucked out. We get decompression, no oxygen. It'd be a whole mess, right? So they decide to shoot the aliens while they're in zero gravity, and you see their bodies start floating up and the blood is floating up, and then they have to almost swim and avoid it in the craziest obstacle course ever. And I honestly think that that scene is my new favorite set piece of the franchise.
It was so cool.
It's just the best.
So many great sequences in this film. And, as we talk through them again, I actually find myself liking the movie even more than I did when we jumped on the call. But
for sure.
Yeah, it's really cool. But story-wise, it ends up the way it always ends up with, you think you're there and then you're not. And there's one more big bad to kind of get through, because the serum in our character, I can't remember.
Yeah.
But she injects herself and then ends up giving birth to this, Kay ends up giving birth to this crazy 12-foot tall alien humanoid thing.
Because she's pregnant at this time. And so by taking the alien goo to try and survive, it basically ends up the xenomorph, whatever you want to call it, right? The goo attaches itself not to her, but to her fetus. So you get this giant, like you said, 12, 15 foot tall, bald, white, super pale xenomorph hybrid thing that looks very engineered to me as well. Yeah, I feel like that's the one callback to Prometheus here, is it looks very much like that villain from that movie. And the space jockeys, people called it.
And then we get the really cool part where, the final battle takes place between Rain and this thing as the ship is beginning to crash into the rings, or as the station is. And she tries to fight him off, get back to the ship and get away and survive, which she does. So it ends with her and her android, Andy, on their way to this planet that they've been originally trying to get to for, to have freedom.
Yeah.
So, a lot of stuff going on. So many cool scenes. Let's talk. Let's score the story. If you can't tell from watching this, we both think highly of it. We scored it an 8 out of 10 overall, and I could even be like talked into going a little higher on that at this point, but I think
For
8 out
sure.
of 10 is fair. So
I think honestly where I finally weighed down on this, right? If it ends up being a solid 9 or a solid 8 is going to be if we get a sequel to this and what it looks like, because I think it sets up a really interesting premise for potentially the first Alien movie on an already like civilized world, which I would love.
You know, and I'm going to ask you a question when we get to Intangibles, because I do want your thoughts on where the franchise goes from here, because the franchise isn't done. Like, this movie's way too good to have it be done. So,
well, they already announced a TV show too, and some people got teasers for that before their screening.
Oh, I did not.
I was not lucky enough either. It seems like it was just pretty much a title card, but we know that Alien Earth is in development for FX for 2025. Yeah.
Okay. You know, it's sad that amongst the 40 minutes of trailers I got, I did not get that.
Right.
I got the most trailers I think I've ever seen prior to this movie. It was nuts. But all right, so we scored it 8 out of 10. Cast performances. Hey, who's your favorite character in the movie?
Probably Andy, to be honest, because he gets to be two entirely different people essentially, which that's always compelling to me, right? We've talked about that with Dark Matter and some other stuff this year. I always love seeing actors get to not just explore different sides of character, but explore different outcomes, right, of a character, of who they could be. And Andy, about halfway through this movie, kind of switches his chip where he goes from being, essentially Rain's older brother, right? But he's like a little, he's protective, but he's very shy. He's an older model, right? So he's kind of malfunctioning. And, no one really.
Oh, but he's got dad jokes, though.
He does. And no one really sees him as a person. But she does, right? And I think a big part of that is because that's the last thing she has left from her parents, and the way that Andy was programmed, right? It has her dad's jokes in there. The prime directive is do what's best for her. So
yeah, I think that's a great choice. And David Jonsson does a fantastic job as Andy in the film. I think mine is Bjorn, because Bjorn, while being the first character to leave us, I think, right? Yeah,
because he dies from the acid blood raining on him, which is terrifying.
An amazingly cool death scene in a movie. In a series that's had like a ton of death scenes already, to have one that's somewhat original, new, and cool, and kind of creepy and scary is great. So the reason I pick him is because at first he's just an asshole, and he remains one. But there turns out to be layers to this character.
Yes.
And in what, an hour or so, you told a lot about this person, which I thought was kind of cool. And the tough exterior, the like, oh, I don't give a crap about anything, and I just whatever, tell it like it is. When he's in that room where the facehuggers are in the water, like the terror on him, like you see that all of that was a facade. This dude is like terrified.
Yes, absolutely.
And it is fantastic. And then his death scene is tremendous. Yeah. So probably mine. That one is mine, but there are many to pick from here. I think Isabella Merced as Kay does a really good job in a role that just is kind of absent for a good part of the film, but then becomes very important.
Yeah. She has crazy range as an actor too. Because do you know what her other big role before this was?
It was Dora the Explorer, wasn't it?
It was the live action Dora, yeah. But we're gonna get to see more of this kind of capable badass side of her.
What would happen?
Playing, Dina in The Last of Us season 2, which I'm stoked for.
Nice. What would happen if the xenomorph, like the facehugger, impregnated Dora? Like, what would come out?
I mean, I don't know. Probably just the same thing as almost it's a person, right? But I don't know if she'd have that Would it be a bilingual alien? Would it be like would have like two different types of hisses? Be talking to the camera, being like, "Do you see where my food is?"
Well, remember, you got the two heads, right? You got the head and then the head inside the mouth. So you've got
True.
There's the capability. I also liked the character Tyler in the movie, and not because of the name sharing,
The
but
namesake. Yeah.
yeah, it is. I just thought it was a well performed role. Archie Renaux.
Yeah. He's like the penultimate human survivor, right?
Yes.
Like he's the guy
Well,
who teaches
no,
her.
Kay is.
Well, yeah,
but,
yeah, that's right. He's the one who teaches her how to use the gun, right?
and you know what? That scene honestly made me think about you. Like, made me think of you so much.
I watched that
like,
and I'm like, this is totally some shit I would say.
Yeah, it made me laugh because I'm like, this is Hayden. It is
Yeah.
He's like, okay, you do this, and this will auto aim for you, do this. And she's like, how do you know this much? And he's like, oh, from games.
Yeah, video games and magazines.
Yeah. I'm like, yep.
So
that's pretty much Hayden. But that was cool. And it was just such a cool, and it's a great line
fun world building thing, right? Because it like, you know, it makes us learn more about lore and what people do. And we see the little scene of like where they're playing like a third person shooter, but it looks like it has like 70s, 80s games graphics kind of because of when the technological language because of this movie franchise starting in 79 was really cool. And that gun, like you asked me on the podcast the other day, like what weapon from any movie or whatever want to bring into the real world and own. I think my answer's changed because that gun is like the coolest piece of hardware I've seen anything in a long time.
Although I will say this for that gun, like from a story, like little bit of a story gap perspective, that gun stays on nearly empty for a long time.
It sure does.
Being fired. So I'm just saying, but I don't care. It was great, and the gun plays like numerous roles in the scenes to come.
Yeah,
not just killing xenomorphs, but from a movement standpoint, from all these, it's really cool. So
they use it for the zero gravity, almost like a jetpack, where she'll shoot behind her, the recoil propel her forward, or there's the one where she's about to, when they're swimming in the zero gravity, she's about to go into this massive pile of the acid blood, so she shoots vertical, and the recoil just brings her down. Like it's the Swiss Army knife of pulse rifles.
There was one other scene, and this one involved this gun that reminded me of Star Wars, by the way, and it was in the elevator shaft when she's face to face with the xenomorph in a really nice nod to Alien 3, by the way.
Yes.
Probably the most iconic shot in the series, where Ripley has the alien like right up against her, you know, in that shot. We get a nod to it here, and it's really well done. But when she's looking up and the rifle is like hanging off of the thing but won't fall to her or whatever, and it reminded me of Obi-Wan when he's like hanging down the thing with Maul above him and trying to
yep.
So yeah, I don't know. I might just be reaching because I really like Star Wars, but there might be some Star Wars nods or at least inspiration in some of this movie, which I'm good with because it was well used.
And that's cool too, as a callback to franchise history, right? Because the original Alien was created in a direct response to Star Wars' blockbuster success, and studios trying to cash in and do their own sci-fi space franchise.
So characters, Hayden, what'd you rate, or what did we, I shouldn't ask you because we did it together. We rated characters the exact same between us, by the way, but 8 out of 10 overall.
Yep.
So I think really well cast. I think the performances were really solid across the board, and no one like stole the show, which in my opinion would have been a bad thing here.
Yeah, like you don't feel like anyone was like upstaging anyone, right?
Yeah.
To use the
Everything fit together well.
I'm a little lower on some of the supporting cast than you are. I didn't like the two rowdy British guys as much. I think maybe they'll grow on me if I watch the movie again. But they just, I don't know. They felt very cartoony to me. Like, you know what I mean? But I think it kind of works if you think about this in the sense of they're trying to go for something that emulates the vibe of the original Alien duology from the 70s and 80s. And I feel like this character very much embodies like the stereotypical 70s and 80s British punk kind of guy.
Yes, and also like it just kind of played into the idea that these characters have no business being in this situation.
Not at all. No.
So
Yeah.
like they're nowhere near prepared enough, and the super thick English accent will always get me when he's like, "There's some in the wall,"
Yeah, right.
It's fantastic. So, love our English friends up there. I'm not making fun at all. I definitely wish I could.
It's endearing.
It is. I wish, and by the way, like no one's ever making fun of the English accent. At least I hope not, because every smart, wise character in every movie ever has a British accent. Every single one.
True.
So, look, sound, and feel. I thought set design here was fantastic. I thought lighting was well done, and I thought the sound
perfect.
It has like the horror score that's in so many like very current horror movies, and like it reminded me a lot of what's the movie we just watched with Nicolas Cage?
Long Legs.
Yeah.
Yep.
A lot of the same type of music score there.
Yeah, especially in the very beginning scene where they harvest the alien's body, and you have just like it's almost like a one note, like progressive, intense chorus of like female voices where it almost sounds like they're like screaming in fear. Was pretty cool. And I think there are aspects of this movie that are very 2020s to me. In good ways and bad ways, right? And I think a lot of that is just the advancements in CGI and stuff. With one glaring exception, which we'll get to, I feel like the CGI in this movie looked incredible and never took me out of it. Even things that I knew obviously were not real, like whenever you have a shot that's just the ship in space, like it looked incredible to me.
I think my favorite favorite choice they made in terms of sound was the decision to honor the fact that in the vacuum of space there is no sound. It added to the fear factor in a lot of things. Like when the hull blows out and all of a sudden you go from this really tense like score and sound and all this stuff to nothing. And it was just fantastic. It was so well done. Then you get back inside the ship and now there's sound again. It is a far cry from Star Wars, which I brought up a couple times, having the know lasers firing off in space and everything, going nuts. But I thought it was well done, and I thought the lighting, red is the background on the poster for a very good reason. There's a lot of red in this movie,
right? Because that's kind of like that's the go-to emergency low power lighting,
But I don't know. Like I thought it was really great. This, like I said, set design fantastic. But let's talk about sort of the elephant in the room from a look, sound, and feel standpoint, and that is Ian Holm, who played Ash in the original Alien, the android in that film, passed away in 2020. Yet Ian Holm is on screen in this movie as what is our character's name? Rook. Yes. Which I thought was a really great choice, by the way, because Rook is running the board on the chess game throughout this movie.
For sure. And I thought it was a good call to have it be like a new character with the same likeness, rather than if they had tried to because they could have very easily tried to go for some crazy shit like, oh, they found my body parts in the wreckage and put me back together. I'm glad that they recognized they were like this. We've already seen, right, that there are some people, like there are many faces shared amongst some of these. I'm trying to think. In Covenant, I think Walter and David both are Michael Fassbender's likeness. So there's already precedent for that. So I'm glad they kind of kept that rule going.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I was wondering going in if we get Lance Henriksen, who played the bishop, because he is still with us. And
when they started teasing it, I thought it was going to be Bishop for sure.
But from a story standpoint, this makes so much more sense because this movie is set between 1 and 2.
Yep.
And it very much follows the aftermath of the first one, and so it makes sense that Ash would be the android used here. However, and you were not a fan of just how it was delivered.
I don't know if that's even necessarily true. I'm really mixed on it. I thought it was cool, and it was a cool fan service moment, and it was a cool pop. But I just think I don't know. I feel like there's a ceiling on this technology, right? And I think part of that is just I've been trained to look for it, both in film school and also with, deep fakes and AI videos being used to spread really harmful misinformation sometimes. So I've developed an eye for that, right? A very critical eye for that. And it looked weird in this movie, and it stood out to me in this movie because it's the only thing that doesn't look real, practical, and grounded. I think a lot of the other movie magic happening here is invisible. That one, the second they did it, it became apparent, and I got used to it eventually, but it initially drawed me out. And that's, I said there's very 2020s aspects of this movie, and I feel like that is one as far as like that feels like a very post Marvel, post Star Wars, trying to get like a fan service in the theater crowd pop moment. And I think it's just out of place, I think, for Alien.
I found myself asking myself, like, how many people going to watch this are even going to know who that character is?
Not a lot. And that's the funny thing is in my theater, like, there wasn't a big crowd pop for that. There were just murmurs of people asking their partner, whoever they were with, like, is that the guy from, like, even like my dad was with me, he's like, is that the guy from Aliens? I'm like, no, it's the guy from Alien, right? So I feel like I don't think they're going to get the reaction that they wanted from this. I think it's a swing and a miss, unfortunately.
Yeah, I think it's a nice nod to hardcore fans of the series. Is it well executed from a visual standpoint? No. I found it pretty jarring, actually, from the beginning.
Yeah.
I chose to just, I guess, overlook that because the rest of the movie was so strong.
Right. And he has pretty minimal screen time, honestly. I would be surprised if he even cracks more than 10 minutes.
But
it's got to be less.
Yeah, the thing I keep thinking, though, is like, I feel like this is going to be the first Alien movie a lot of people see, especially younger people, because of the vibe of it, the way it's been marketed, which has been excellent, by the way. And, and I don't know that I feel confident that a lot of those viewers are going to be like, yeah, let's go watch this 45-year-old movie now that we've seen this one.
Yeah, it's weird because it's like, it's one of those things where it's like a moment that I think is supposed to play to like Gen X and the Boomer generation. But
Boomers more so, yeah.
Yeah, but from my perspective, it seems like, at least anecdotally, the ones I've talked to, a lot of the people that are going to see this new movie remember fondly watching those a couple times in their life, but they haven't necessarily revisited them often, or they're not necessarily super fresh in their mind. And I think part of that is because like Alien is a weird franchise because it has acclaim, but it doesn't really have a fandom, and I think that's just because there's not really ways to interact with it much.
There's been such a large spread between the movies, like it's, and Star Wars has been able to do it because they have trilogies, and you have a trilogy, and then it's like a decade before another one, or something, but you have like each generation kind of has their own trilogy, and there's a lot of anticipation and whatnot. Alien just kind of happens when it happens, and it's there's no like there's also no sense of like, oh, I can't wait to see what happens next, right? And I feel like
I think that's because they're fairly formulaic, right? Like I feel like every Alien movie, at least the original 4, right, pretty much ends with Ripley or whoever goes into cryosleep, wakes up, is in another place,
with or without a cat, and it might,
and an alien somehow is there too. And it's funny because there's a problem that happens in the COD Zombies. People talk about how a lot of the maps are just facilities, right? Where it's just like it's like this map is an army base in Russia. This one's an army base in the U.S. This one's an army base in Vietnam. But they all feel very same.
The same. Yeah.
And I think Alien has that problem in a big way because all of them pretty much are set in just a remote outpost. This one included.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's going to be the first point I make when we get to Intangibles. So I guess let's wrap up Look, Sound, and Feel with I know we hit on it. We hit a couple things here, but we actually both scored this really high. It gets a 9 out of 10 from us.
Yeah.
In look, sound, and feel, and mostly because I think for me, set design and just the sound in the movie
Is perfect.
is really good. Yeah,
for sure.
Intangibles, and this is, future of the series. There's definitely going to be more Alien, but
I fucking hope so.
I,
At this point,
I want to see Fede Alvarez back directing more because I think this is the wheelhouse. Like this is perfect, and B, I want to see this franchise go forward now in more of an anthology format where we're getting standalone stories set within the universe. I don't necessarily need or even want a follow-up to this movie.
I disagree on that point because
Okay.
I think they set up a very interesting sequel because they're going to that new planet, which already has people, already has a civilization there. And that's not something that has really ever happened in this franchise. Like I said, they're always somewhere very remote. And Aliens, obviously, that was a colony. But by the time they got there, the colony's already fallen, and the only survivor is new. So I want to see, like, I think they could kind of do. I think that a sequel to this could do for this franchise what Scream 6 did for that one, where it's just in a much more dense location, which provides all sorts of panic and unique challenges. So I want to see it. But I also feel like there's a chance that that's what the Alien Earth show could be. So
maybe.
We'll see.
And the reason I say I don't is because one of the things that takes away from the original 4 for me, well, 3, is that, the more we see Ripley facing off with aliens and not actually getting killed by one, and obviously in 3, right, that changes, but it takes away some of the tension. I want to see original characters each time, and I just, where we don't know. Like I said before, we don't necessarily need more added to the lore at this point. Now we just need to see the world built out more.
Agreed.
And I would like to see that. So I would be for like a colony one, where it's more like ground, on the ground in a like populated area. I'm all for that. I'm not sure it needs to be the same characters. If it is, fine, but maybe they're just there, but not like the focal point. I don't know. I would like to see more of a standalone format to this, because I think even Prometheus and Covenant, I think, was restrained by how much it felt it had to be true to Prometheus.
It honestly seems, I've been reading up on it, and it honestly kind of feels like the opposite was actually true when they were making it. That Ridley Scott wanted to do a follow-up to Prometheus, and the studio wanted a more kind of safe, traditional Alien movie. And so he kind of made that movie out of spite. So,
Fair
but
enough.
I definitely get what you're saying, because I do feel like Covenant feels more traditional of an Alien movie than Prometheus, even just down to the name. One has Alien in the title, the other doesn't, right? So,
but I guess I mean, in terms of like, if you were going to set something that is kind of a follow-up, like there's just things you have to revisit and answer, so and I'd like to see a sequel to this not be really like held down by that. But that said, I think there's not many loose ends to tie up here anyway, so it would probably be fine.
Yeah, I mean, they did a very good job, I think, of ending it in a way that they left the door cracked open, so they have somewhere to go. But if it doesn't happen, I still feel like we got a really good story.
And I think the next step here is like, what happens with this serum now, right? Because was that preserved like the rest of it?
Yeah, she's got it.
Yeah, she's got it. So
that's what's interesting to me as far as, but I don't know. It's tough because they kind of put themselves, I feel like they're limited in how far reaching things can go because of where they're at in the timeline, because they're between Alien 1 and 2, right? So we know there's certain things that have to happen, so they can't have like a, galactic apocalyptic event or anything.
Watch, she's gonna like get tripped up. She's going to land at the colony that ends up in Alien 2 or Aliens. And then she's going to end up being like Newt's mom.
Dude. I fucking hate you for saying that because, like, that's just something that, like, a fucking studio exec would pitch and think they were a genius for.
Absolutely.
And make happen. Yeah.
So
we'll see if the Alien Resurgence is big enough. Like, we will get more video games and we will probably get a Disney ride. So yeah, anything can happen.
It's a series made for the toy aisle. I'm saying, I'm just kidding. It's not, but you know,
it kind of is though, because there's so many.
What small child doesn't want a large xenomorph toy for Christmas? You know.
Like, I mean, I think if kids in like the 8 to 14 range still played with toys, that would be a big one.
Sure.
Like a demo that could possibly hit, but I don't know.
Can I get an animatronic one that moves around like an Alien 3? Remember the one like right before the face scene?
This is like that just was like superimposed from a different shot and is crazy stiff. Dude, genuinely the animatronic at the old Disney ride looked better than that. Have you ever? Oh, you haven't been to Disney in Florida, right?
Yep.
Have you?
Yeah, but not for a minute. I might not have seen it.
Do you remember the Great Big Movie Ride from forever ago? That was like a staple. That it closed just in the last 5 years.
Oh yeah, I think I know what you're talking about. Yep.
Yeah, because they had a scene where a xenomorph popped down and jump scared the shit out of you, and that was perfect.
We need an Alien Disney Plus show. Let's go. So let's make it happen.
Oh, jeez.
Crossover, MCU and Alien.
Tyler, I've got some fucking news for you, buddy.
What's that?
August 28th, you can pick up the Aliens versus Avengers comic series issue #1.
See,
It's real. It's real.
That's the thing. Like, I say this stuff only half jokingly half the time because I know that there's a chance it will happen. So, yeah. But there are, like, if you're interested in the Alien series, like, you don't even have to go watch the 45-year-old movie. I highly recommend it because it's amazing. Yeah. But there are a ton of, like, comics out there in the Alien world and novels even. So,
I think Alien Isolation is probably definitely a good point to go into if you're looking for a game. Because the director seems to have pulled a lot from that. There were actually a couple of Easter eggs to that game in this movie, which is pretty cool.
So, anything else on Intangibles that you want to bring up? I mean, for me, this movie is super rewatchable. I will watch it again.
For sure. Same.
Yeah.
This is, I think, going to be a rare, like, I got to buy the 4K Blu-ray of this just to be able to watch, like, every once in a while, right? Because there's so many scenes that I can't wait to just, like, I'm excited for this movie to have a digital release. Obviously, I want to stay in theaters for a while and do well, which it seems to be doing, which is great. But, like, I cannot wait to just have that zero gravity sequence just on YouTube, able to rewatch whenever I need.
You brought up 4K Blu-rays. When I was waiting for you to get your internet connected, I went steelbook shopping on Amazon.
Oh, did you?
Yeah.
Is there a pre-order out for this yet?
Probably, but I don't know. But yeah, I ended up grabbing a couple. There's a Nightmare on Elm Street steelbook coming, by the way, if anybody's into steelbooks. That is.
Ooh, hell yeah.
So, yeah. Okay. So, Intangibles, we scored this a 9 out of 10. Both high on it, which means that the total for this movie, I guess I'll say, you might differ on this. I'll give you a chance to voice that. I think it is the best Alien movie since the original. I like it more than the second one.
You like it more than Alien with an S. You like it more than Aliens.
I like it more than Newt saying they mostly come at night. Mostly.
I love that line. That line's great.
I'm not even saying I hate it. It's just,
No, I know. I'm not sure what my ranking would look like, honestly, because I think Aliens in this movie have such a different tone. Like, this movie feels much closer to the first one to me than Aliens because it's more of a standard horror than an action movie. Yeah. But I definitely think, like, I think this is probably, as much as I love Prometheus and, enjoy aspects of Covenant, I definitely think this is better than those. And I think like this is everything that this, I think this is honestly the best case scenario of what this could have been. I feel
I
like
agree.
this was just really masterfully handled.
This is some of the most fun I've had at the theater this summer.
Yeah.
And I will say, like, this is the movie of the summer for me in terms of being able to say this was so much better than I thought it was going to be.
Yeah. And it's just the perfect summer movie, right? It's a great, like, horror blockbuster with great action, great scares. I think if for some reason you're watching this and haven't seen it yet, one, we appreciate you, but two, you gotta, it's worth the experience for sure to do it in theaters.
And I'll say one other thing when I say it's way up there in terms of I like it much more than I thought I would. I saw Horizon and liked it. And I still think I like this one more than on a higher degree than I thought it versus what I thought I would.
Yeah.
So
what's our final score on this thing?
Yeah, our final score on this thing is 8.5, and we probably could have gone a little higher.
Yeah.
We're going to be fair. This movie is not perfect, but it is really good time. And for horror movies, that's what it should be.
Agreed. And I think on that 8.5, I'm closer to a 9 than an 8.
Me too. I am too. And so many franchises say we're going back to our roots. This one did.
They did.
And did it well and did it in a way. And the biggest reason I find it better than Aliens is because last time I watched Aliens, which was like a week and a half ago, it just screamed 80s to me in like every way. Some good, by the way, but this one I don't feel is going to be as locked by its time. I think this one might age a little bit better.
Yeah, I'd be curious to revisit this every 5-ish years from now and see, how it holds up and if that's true.
So, okay. 8.5 for us. It's good. Go see it. Let us know what you think of the movie in the comments, and make sure you like the video, subscribe to the channel, all that good stuff, and visit our website, strangelyAwesomeGames.com. Thanks, everybody, for being here for this almost full hour of Alien Romulus talk. We will talk to you soon. And check out, if you're still watching, check out our live stream of Gamescom Opening Night Live on Tuesday.
Big week,
We'll talk to you later, everybody. Bye.
Take care, y'all.